Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The United States magazine Foreign Policy has suggested establishing a Polish-Ukrainian political union along the lines of the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. According to the magazine's journalists, a political union between the two countries is justified not by nostalgia, but by common interests.
Shortly after the war broke out, Poland passed a law allowing refugees from Ukraine to obtain national insurance numbers and access a range of social and health benefits. As of the 24th of February this year, nearly 11 million refugees had arrived in Poland from Ukraine, of whom nearly 9 million have returned to Ukraine. Currently, the same rights are enjoyed by Polish citizens in Ukraine. According to a foreign policy magazine, tightening Polish-Ukrainian relations could lead to a union along the lines of the one in the late 14th century. Much of today's Ukraine shares far more of its past with Poland than it does with Russia, notwithstanding claims of Russian propagandists to the contrary. Even if Ukraine's war against Russia ends with a decisive Ukrainian victory, Kiev faces a potentially decades-long struggle to join the EU. Imagine instead that at the end of the war, Poland and Ukraine form a common federal or confederal state, merging their foreign and defense policies and bringing Ukraine into the EU and NATO almost instantly. The Polish-Ukrainian Union would become the second largest country in the EU and arguably its largest military power. However, the formation of a Polish-Ukrainian Union is not possible at the moment because Ukraine is at war with Russia, which complicates the process of Ukraine's accession to both NATO and the European Union. From Kiev's perspective, a state model assuming a strong alliance with Poland is beneficial because it would facilitate the accession process as well as Ukraine's functioning within the European Union. Indeed, from the American point of view, which fortunately is absolutely in line with our interests, a situation in which there would be peace in our part of the world and its maintenance would not rest primarily on the shoulders of American citizens, who would have to give both in human and financial terms for defense against Russia, requires the creation of a structure that would bear at least a significant part of the burden on its own, and no one other than Poland with Ukraine will create such a structure. On the other hand, France and Germany could potentially lose politically from any possible alliance. Today, such a need exists again. Russia is attacking those countries that want to liberate themselves from under its former influence. Germany, in turn, is pushing its way into the Union and wants to dominate and deprive the countries of Central Europe of their identity. So the cooperation of large nations like Poland, Ukraine, but also smaller ones, in the event of the formation of a possible union, many opportunities would open up before the newly formed state entity. The territory of the alliance would stretch from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Ukraine has many ports on the Black Sea from which it exports food and steel. Meanwhile, Poland's economy is thriving compared to other European countries. Our cooperation is beneficial from the point of view of both economies. The region of Central and Eastern Europe, that is the belt of the Baltic countries, Poland, Ukraine. Without this region, it is impossible to enter Western Europe when it comes to logistics. So all plans to tighten cooperation are a moment to do today, because this friendship naturally grows, and the levels or spaces in which we can cooperate. But for now, this is the first stage to think about the future. As Marshal Józef Piłsudski claimed, without an independent Ukraine, there can be no independent Poland. According to Professor Piotr Grochmalski, this thesis is also confirmed by current realities. Had it not been for the strategic Polish-Ukrainian cooperation, it is difficult to say what the course of this war would have been. This is Mackinder's solution. And let's remember that Mackinder talked to Piłsudski, who presented him with elements of his thinking about this area of Central Europe. This shows that an eminent European geopolitician saw the need to create this type of mechanism as a guarantor before the outbreak of World War II. The two countries see each other as strategic partners, and this perception has persisted for almost 30 years. After the 24th of February last year, these ties strengthened considerably, but the topic of a possible union has not been mentioned in official speeches by government representatives.
Day 397 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian troops shelled Slavyansk, a frontline town in the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. 2 people were killed and 29 were wounded. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met soldiers on the front line in the Zaporizhzhia region in the south of the country, and British actor Orlando Bloom paid a visit to Ukraine as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Ukraine's ground forces commander said on Monday that Kiev was planning its next move after Moscow shifted the focus of its offensive from a flagging assault on the eastern city of Bakhmut to another town further south, described as post-apocalyptic. The Ukrainian military aims to wear down Russian forces as much as possible before launching a counter-offensive in the coming weeks or months, seeking to end the all-out invasion launched by Russian President Vladimir Putin 13 months ago. Ukrainian ground forces commander Colonel General Alexander Syrsky said last week that the counterattack could come very soon.
Ну, один взрыв, взрывная волна.
There was one explosion and a shockwave. It stunned me. People got scared and fell on the ground. Then there was another explosion. Those who were more or less fine went to the hospital on their own. The roof was destroyed over there. The window was blown out. And those two places are relatively far from the epicenter. But what happened here is just... My husband came here. His friend was inside the conscription office undergoing medical checkup. When we saw him, he was terrified, stunned, and his nose was bleeding. He sustained a blast injury. It almost feels like a second birthday for him. He's alive, but terrified. Other people were scared too. Orlando Bloom, a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations children organization UNICEF and a star of the Pirates of the Caribbean and Lord of the Rings films, met Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in Kiev on Sunday. Bloom showered Zelensky with praise before reaching across the table and pounding Zelensky's chest while telling an amused Ukrainian leader, "You have a heart."
So encouraging. Yeah. I mean, in so many ways, to see just the remarkably stoic nature of the people of Ukraine. And of course, your messaging that I think is reflected in their courage and in their determination and in their perseverance and resilience is just, it's to see the children, to see in their eyes. Yes. It's palpable, the anxiety, and yet the strength of the Ukrainian people is something that is really awe-inspiring in truth. So it's, and of course, your messaging is the reason for that. So it's remarkable to see how you are, holding this country and
we have a good country.
Well,
we hold each other.
Yes.
And thank you very much for your coming and your messages, because your coming is also a big message, and for us it's very important.
It was Bloom's first trip to Ukraine since 2016, the British actor said. He also visited a children's centre in the city. The Spilno Centre, spread all over Ukraine, offers support for displaced children and their families, with more than 500,000 children and their caregivers having visited one in the past year, according to a UNICEF statement published on its website. Early today, airports, bus and railway stations across Germany were at a standstill, causing disruptions for millions during one of the largest workouts in decades, as Europe's largest economy reels from inflation. The 24-hour strikes called by the Ver.D trade union and Railway and Transport Union EVG were the latest in months of industrial action, which has hit major European economies as higher food and energy prices dent living standards. Two of Germany's largest airports, Munich and Frankfurt, suspended flights, while long-distance rail services were cancelled by rail operator Deutsche Bahn. Striking workers wearing red high-visibility jackets blew horns and whistles through an empty Munich railway station. Employees are pressing for higher wages to blunt the effects of inflation, which reached 9.3% in February. A lot of people, also those working in the public service sector, suffer from high energy prices and high inflation these days, and that is why it is our job to come to a good conclusion. Our public administration employees are doing a very good job, and so I am confident that we will come to a good solution this week. We expect a negotiable offer on the table. To this day, we haven't had one. The rents, especially here in the Frankfurt area, are no longer manageable. People have 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, and our demands are a minimum requirement. So we need to stay steadfast and keep our demands up. Germany, which was heavily dependent on Russia for gas before the war in Ukraine, has been particularly hard hit by higher prices as it scrambled for new energy sources, with inflation rates in recent months exceeding the euro area average. That's it. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business, and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.